Good afternoon. It's a privilege to speak before you today. I want to by thanking the presidents of the chambers of Romania, Congressman Pettinger, Chairman Papasco, for organizing this important forum at this vital time. Mr. Papasco's leadership on many of the issues that I will raise today, including initiatives and actions to push back against China's attempts to control and manipulate telecommunications sector, has been exemplary and instructive. I'd like to start by bringing us to focus on the elephant in the room, China. The future of diplomacy largely depends on how the world sees and deals with what is more than a mere challenge to democracy, freedom, human dignity. It's a direct threat and waging an all-out assault on these values. In my current work, I'm regaled with information that confirms the justification of my long-time alarm over the willful naivete of the global community concerning China. As many of you are aware, China has aligned itself, even though carefully, with Russia in the midst of Putin's brutal invasion. So what does this mean to us? While the international community rightfully engages in self-examination regarding the foregone opportunities to stop Putin and begins to unite in solidarity with Ukraine, we cannot afford to take our eyes off China. What the CCP has in store for the entire world will make the situation in Ukraine pale in comparison. Price of failure to contain this threat would be much higher than the cost of sending military aid to defend against Russia. The potential military conflict with China won't be resolved by deploying Javelin anti-tank missiles, Soviet-made military hardware, or Turkish-made drones. Xi Jinping continues to make threats against Taiwan and wages an ongoing genocide against the Uyghur people. The international community's tepid response has only recently begun to shift. China is watching the level of resolve regarding Ukraine and has felt secure in making assertions regarding its own imminent assault yet on another sovereign democracy. This alignment between Russia and China is beyond mere pragmatism. It is ideological. Under the framework and pretense of regeneration of the Chinese nation, the Chinese Communist Party has been engaged in its long game for decades. Management of the ideological battlefield that has been emphasized, including the number document, which is a party communique that outlines CCP's desire to continue to engage in ideological war with the Western democracies. From Mao to Xi Jinping, CCP leadership has been clear. From Mao to Xi Jinping, the Chinese leadership has been very clear. It's in vision and has shared its pretense: hide your strengths and bide your time. In essence, they have been waging a constant battle against Western democracies, ideology, influence that goes against CCP's core value, struggle, and for its struggle for existence. They have been recognized and made it clear that capitalism and democratic norms faced with socialist system are incompatible. CCP uses a term such as battle in the literally every speech, public statements in dealing with the United States and others, even on matters such as trade. It is a zero-sum game for the CCP. It's not mutual existence, and it's not about win-win struggle. It is a life and death struggle for the CCP and communist leadership in Beijing, in that the regime will do anything at any cost, and it considers all means justified. CCP's constant battle against the West is severe and pervasive. It is only becoming more aggressive regionally, but also globally. Acquisition of critical ports, control of the South China Sea, a critical supply chain and telecommunication, and materials in the areas as far as Africa. Today, this ideological struggle is moving towards the literal. In light of the atrocities in Ukraine, we cannot ignore Xi Jinping himself has said regarding intention for Taiwan. The Chinese leaders has displayed China's intent for chain of aggression. So it is unlikely that Xi Jinping will stop with Taiwan. China has both territorial and maritime conflict with all of its neighbors. Two of them happen to be America's treaty allies, namely Japan and the Philippines. So the stakes are high for the United States and its allies in the Indo-Pacific region. We know now ignoring Russia's invasion of Georgia, Crimea, and military operations in Syria have been costly and consequential. And Taiwan is not the only target overcoming the century of humiliation that the Chinese leaders believe they must seek vengeance for. The costly mistakes that so many leaders in the Western world are continuing to make is treat diplomacy with China as the end goal, when diplomacy is the tool that we should use to ensure global peace. This peace will never be achieved if the Chinese regime controls the world order. While engaging in horrific repression at home, increasing authoritarianism aggression abroad, undermining international rules-based order has been largely overlooked and ignored. The exportation of China's present governance model, which threatens democratic systems, and norms, it is technological authoritarianism, pollution of the global supply chain with products produced by slave labor, as well as growing influence operations in Europe and beyond, are truly alarming. In February 4th of this year, joint statement by Xi Jinping and Putin, one part in particular stands out as worth highlighting, that both sides attach great importance to the issues of governance in the field of artificial intelligence. This is an area China far ahead of the Western world, most notably in surveillance technologies. By using state-of-the-art AI surveillance, advanced biometrics, mandatory DNA testing, Chinese communist regime managed to hurt millions of Uyghurs in the concentration camps and forced labor facilities while turning the entire region into an open-air prison. While observers were shocked by the old world feel to Putin's invasion, hacking by the World War II era, sites that our present generations never expected to relieve, we must note that China is likewise resurrecting concentration camps and slavery, but with a digitized update that far out masters anything that Russia could muster. China touts that facial recognition software can pick up individual faces of 1.4 million in seconds, and software that identify ethnic groups and emotions are also being tested. Dystopian reality of Chinese surveillance is now spreading across the entirety of the country and around the world. Shanghai is a good example as a reminder. Eric Schmidt, the co-founder of Google, said in 2018 that he predicts that the internet would split into two by 2028. One would be the Chinese internet, one led by the United States. When we examine the present realities of censorship in China, we can only imagine what severe environmental global response to this would lead when combined with the misuse and exploitation of technologies by the Chinese regime. Ukraine has given us a small window into the truth that we're not living in an age where so-called foreign atrocities will not touch us. The Chinese and Russian regimes are actively trying to inject authoritarianism into the global bloodstream. The tools with which they accomplish these goals includes bots on the social media, selling smart city technologies around the world, and Belt and Road Initiative. Our world is indeed interconnected in a way that it was not during the Hitler's reign of terror. While an American father in Iowa in 1933 might have felt that Germany was a world away, and just a decade later his son would die in Europe. Today we don't possess the distance which we did at the time. Any bargaining chip that the Chinese regime has at present has been provided to it by the international community. China has used forced labor, dirty coal to make solar panels, continued to approve state-subsidized coal-powered plants. China's aggression has been also full display over the past couple of years. Wolf warrior diplomacy, for example, with all of its aggressive overtones, will be dropped quickly as the party identifies a need to portray itself soft again in times of particular vulnerability. The international community have already suffered to this new type of Chinese diplomacy efforts. Again, I emphasize that diplomacy in and of itself should not be our end goal. So what do we do to pull democracy back from the brink? First, we must fully recognize the threat for what it is. One of the common mistakes that the United States has made in the past 5 decades is to focus, for the most part, on what our strategic foreign policy approach should be specifically with respect to China, rather than focusing and countering China's traditional and strategic approach, which is a zero-sum game. As noted about it, it is a battle between liberal democracy and autocracies. Capitalism and Leninist socialism in the case of US-China. Evidently, China has been very clear and consistent, whereas the West has been naive and ineffective in our approach with respect to communist China. So one other area that we have to figure out is how do we push back against China's coercive diplomatic efforts that has become a new norm, that has been implemented and practiced through influence operations. Hoover Institute published a report clearly and correctly summarized the Chinese influence operations in 3 words: corrupt, coercive, and corrosive influence operations. Europe has been also suffered China's ongoing diplomatic influence operations. The regime deeply insecure and spend more time and energy on controlling its population. They also worry by doing so they can prevent the Western ideology and democratic ideals will be affecting the population. We must act swiftly to counter Chinese influence operations everywhere around the world. The United States have taken a lead in this, and I hope to see this has become a new norm in European capitals. We must also proactively promote and defend democratic ideals, as we have recently initiated in various capitals. This involves swift cooperation to prioritize these issues, made even more pressing by Putin's assault on democracy. Nations must align and partner with the United States to counter China's attempt to control and create new world order. We must learn from the lessons of disastrous engagement and appeasement approaches. In fact, today, the international community paying a high price for its appeasement in the past. So we also should push back for China's coercive diplomatic efforts. It's not that difficult. So one of the common mistakes that the diplomats make around the world is to repeat Chinese propaganda statements, such as we're not against China rise, we're against Taiwanese independence. That plays nicely into the Chinese propaganda, and it will be used against our diplomats. So that kind of conciliatory statements allows Chinese to effectively push back and put our diplomats in straitjacket. The future of democracy is at stake, and weight of history presses us to prevent the free world order from falling. We are already engaged in a battle for freedom and democracy, and one that will not be fully equipped to fight unless we fully recognize and acknowledge the gravity and urgency of the threat and act swiftly. Thank you very much for listening.